There exists a phenomenon that sociologists rarely discuss and psychologists often misinterpret. When people reach their sixth decade, many begin what appears to be a withdrawal from social circles, family gatherings, and community events. The conventional wisdom labels this as depression, antisocial behavior, or the natural consequence of aging. Yet this perspective misses the deeper truth entirely. What actually occurs is a heightened sensitivity to the energetic frequency of human interaction. After 60 years of absorbing the emotions, thoughts, and psychic debris of others, the human system begins to develop what could be called discernment filters. These are not conscious choices initially, but rather automatic responses from a consciousness that has finally learned to distinguish between nourishing and depleting energetic exchanges. Consider the difference between a young tree that accepts any soil condition and an ancient oak that has learned which nutrients serve its continued growth. The older tree's roots become selective, drawing only what enhances its strength, while naturally repelling what would weaken its foundation. Human consciousness follows a remarkably similar pattern. The people who begin avoiding others after 60 are not becoming antisocial or depressed, they are becoming energetically intelligent. Their decades of experience have taught them to recognize the subtle signs of energy vampirism, emotional manipulation, and psychic drain that they previously accepted as normal human interaction. They have developed an internal compass that points them away from relationships and situations that diminish their life force. This withdrawal often puzzles family members and friends who interpret it as rejection or unkindness. Yet what these individuals are actually experiencing is the emergence of authentic self-preservation. They have spent decades accommodating others' needs, attending obligations that felt empty, and maintaining relationships that existed primarily out of habit or social expectation, rather than genuine connection. The awakening that occurs around 60 is fundamentally about energy management. These individuals have unconsciously catalogued thousands of interactions throughout their lives. They remember how certain people left them feeling drained, confused, or somehow diminished. They recall conversations that seem to circle endlessly without purpose, family gatherings that felt more like performances than authentic connections, and social events that required them to wear masks that grew heavier with each passing year. What emerges is not bitterness or cynicism, but clarity. They begin to understand that their time and energy are finite resources that deserve to be invested wisely. This realization often comes with a profound sense of liberation that younger people struggle to comprehend: the need to please others, to maintain appearances, or to fulfill expectations that never truly aligned with their authentic nature begins to dissolve. The transformation extends beyond mere social preferences. These individuals often discover that solitude, which society frequently portrays as loneliness, actually becomes a source of profound peace and creativity. Without the constant input of other people's emotions, opinions, and agendas, they reconnect with aspects of themselves that may have been dormant for decades. They rediscover interests that were set aside during the busy years of career building and child rearing. They find mental space to explore questions that fascinated them in youth, but were pushed aside by life's practical demands. This selective social withdrawal also represents a form of spiritual maturation. After decades of seeking validation and approval from external sources, these individuals begin to trust their internal guidance system. They recognize that their discomfort in certain social situations was not a personal failing, but accurate intuitive information about energetic incompatibility. The process often unfolds gradually. It might begin with declining invitations to events that once seemed obligatory, Family dinners that previously required emotional preparation suddenly feel optional rather than mandatory. Friendships based primarily on proximity or shared history rather than genuine affinity begin to naturally fade. Phone calls that once felt necessary start to feel intrusive rather than connecting. Critics of this behavior often label it selfish or antisocial. Yet this perspective fails to recognize the decades of selfless service that typically precede this phase of life. Most people over 60 have already given extensively to others through parenting, careers, community involvement, and maintaining relationships. Their selective withdrawal represents not selfishness, but finally learning to honor their own energetic boundaries. This heightened sensitivity to energy also manifests in other areas of life. Many discover they can no longer tolerate crowded spaces that once felt energizing. Shopping malls, busy restaurants, and large gatherings begin to feel overwhelming rather than stimulating. And to me, this really, the background noise of modern life, which younger minds filter automatically, becomes increasingly noticeable and disruptive to their peace of mind. The phenomenon extends to media consumption as well. News programs that once felt informative begin to feel toxic and manipulative. Social media platforms that promised connection reveal themselves as sources of comparison and superficial interaction. Entertainment that relies on conflict, drama, or emotional manipulation loses its appeal entirely. What emerges instead is an appreciation for authentic communication, meaningful silence, and purposeful activity. Conversations become more selective, but infinitely more satisfying. Time spent in nature increases dramatically as the healing properties of natural environments become more apparent. Creative pursuits that connect them to their authentic self take precedence over activities that merely fill time. The wisdom of this selective approach to human interaction becomes apparent when considering the alternative. People who continue to engage in energy-draining relationships and activities often experience increased stress, health problems, and a general sense of life feeling somehow hollow or unfulfilling. So we know that the wisdom of this selective approach to human interaction takes up a whole unfulfilling. Those who honor their energetic boundaries, however, frequently report improved health, increased creativity, and a profound sense of peace that they had not experienced since childhood. This transformation also involves releasing the need to explain or justify their choices to others. The people-pleasing patterns that may have dominated earlier decades give way to a quiet confidence in their own judgment. They no longer feel compelled to attend every invitation, maintain every relationship, or participate in activities that do not align with their current priorities and energy levels. The misunderstanding surrounding this behavior stems from a cultural bias that equates social activity with mental health and personal worth. Society teaches that isolation indicates depression or antisocial tendencies, yet this framework fails to distinguish between chosen solitude and imposed loneliness. The individuals who consciously select their social interactions based on energetic compatibility are practicing a form of self-care that younger generations are only beginning to understand. Their selective approach to relationships often leads to deeper, more meaningful connections with like-minded individuals. Quality replaces quantity as the guiding principle for social interaction. Conversations become more honest, relationships more authentic, and time spent with others more nourishing rather than depleting. This energetic awareness also extends to their physical environment. Homes become carefully curated spaces that support their well-being rather than impressing others. Possessions that carry emotional weight or negative associations are released. Living spaces transform into sanctuaries that reflect their authentic preferences rather than social expectations. The journey toward energetic discernment represents one of the most significant opportunities for personal growth available in later life. Rather than viewing this selective behavior as withdrawal or antisocial tendencies, it can be recognized as the emergence of authentic wisdom. These individuals have learned to trust their inner guidance system and honor their energetic boundaries in ways that support their continued growth and well-being. The transformation ultimately serves not only the individual but the broader community as well. By refusing to participate in energy-draining interactions and toxic relationship patterns, they model healthy boundaries for younger generations. Their selective approach to social engagement demonstrates that authentic connection is possible and that superficial relationships are not mandatory for a fulfilling life. Understanding this phenomenon provides valuable insight for anyone seeking to live more authentically. Rather than judging those who become more selective in their social interactions after 60, we might recognize their behavior as evidence of hard-won wisdom. They have learned to distinguish between connections that nourish and those that deplete, and they have chosen to honor their own well-being in the process. For younger individuals observing this behavior in their elders, the lesson is equally valuable. Rather than interpreting selective social behavior as rejection or depression, consider it evidence of evolving wisdom. These individuals have learned to honor their energetic boundaries and invest their time and attention in ways that support their authentic well-being. Their example provides a roadmap for living more consciously and selectively engaging with the world around us.